Hey guys! Probably the most requested form of celebration for this whole 9K thing was a freebie, and it could not disappoint you guys. So down below in the description box is a link where you can download this PDF. It comes in A4 or letter size. All you have to do is print that sucker out, chop all these pieces up, and you can make a fun page. Now, this has a traveler's notebook sized page, 2 3x4 cards, a tag, and sequins. Of course, couldn't be a celebration without sequins. Dip Today in Glitter is the theme, and that's what I'm going to do today. I'm going to create a page in my pocket page notebook using this Freebie digital, and I've printed out a couple of crazy-ish photos, a couple of selfies here, which I think sort of perfectly illustrate the feeling of celebration and thank you that I feel towards you guys, all 9,000 of you. So let's make this page together. So obviously the first thing I have to do is trim out all these pieces. So I've just got my small paper trimmer here, and I just want to show it's totally possible to trim that out, just being a little bit careful. Everything is lined up, so you're doing the minimum of cuts and you can just chop these all apart. The only bit that I didn't use a trimmer for are the sequins. I didn't even have a punch or a die that fit them, to be honest. But cutting out circles, fussy cutting circles, isn't that difficult, so I wasn't that worried about it. The tag, I did punch the little hole in the middle, and it wasn't exactly the right size for that either, but you can see it still leaves the ring there, and I can tie some string through there later. So I am going to create some 3x4 pockets in the pocket of my pocket page notebook. How many times can I say the word pocket? And I did flip those round, so I've got 3. I've got a photo and the 2 cards, so I do need a 4th one. And I went and just looked through my scrap bin first. I know there are some 3x4 cards or bits of paper cut up and they're ready to use. But as I was flicking through, I found this tealy glitter. It's very hard to see here, but that's glitter paper. It was from some of my Christmas stuff a few years ago, so I used that and typed my journaling out onto the yellow card there. You can see here when I've got the 4 cards here how easily you can use these cards in a like a pocket page spread rather than in a notebook. If you don't do traveler's notebooks, you can still totally use these printables for your pocket pages. The traveler's notebook sized paper on the left there, that can easily be trimmed down into a 4x6 card as well. I wasn't quite sure what to attach the photo onto the glitter paper with, so I used some red line tape and it actually worked really well. I wasn't sure that even that was going to work, so that worked really nicely. And then I did go ahead and trim out those sequins. It wasn't that difficult after all. I don't love the way that the teal bit on the tag was sitting on the actual teal paper, so I did tear that and didn't tear it in the right place. It was still sitting on the teal paper. So I just swapped them around. I'm going to put the bigger piece on the right hand side of my spread and the smaller piece on the left hand side. That wasn't sort of how I had intended it, but I'm just going to go with it. After I run out of tape runner and grab a new one, I stick those 2 down, and I kind of like how it looks. It looks like I've sort of torn the middle out of the page there. Just to add a little bit of texture to this tag, I ran it around my sewing machine just with some white thread, and I love that kind of dimension. I roughed up the edges a little bit. I'm going to rough up the edges, this ripped edge of my paper as well. Where I tore the paper is a little bit thinner. I should have mentioned I printed all of this on sort of, I think it's 200 GSM card. Sometimes I just print on paper, sometimes card. I liked it on the cards this time. It just gave a bit more weight to the 3x4 cards. It does mean that the traveler's notebook paper is a little bit thicker, so you could always print it on both. Now I've stuck everything down. I'm gonna create sort of a scatter of sequins across the page.
with both these printed ones and just a bunch of random mix of sort of red and pink sequins I had in my stash. They worked really nicely with it. Normally I stick my sequins down with a bit of multi-matte medium, but I was kind of thinking about a more immediate way of sticking them down, and it also occurred to me that lots of people ask me about my We Are Memory Keepers sequins, and they're just they're like sort of glue dots behind them, so I wondered, will glue dots work? And that's what I'm going to use, and they work a treat. So the first thing I'm doing is just laying out where I want my sequins to go, and then I'm going to just pop them onto the glue dots and stick them down. Immediate, no drying time. I loved it actually. It was a tiny bit tedious, and I don't love how these particular glue dots have all these tiny little individual pieces of plastic. That's definitely not my favorite. But so if you wanted to make your own like We Are Memory Keepers sequin stickers, grab a baking sheet and a bunch of glue dots and stick to your heart's consent. I think it would make a really fun sort of sticker project. But the glue dots I've got are quite large. They only just fit underneath these smaller sequins. So you could probably cut them into maybe halves or quarters if you had even smaller sequins than that. But this worked a treat. The other thing I thought to mention is like this printable would go really nicely with my sequin cut file that I had on one of my pink paisley layouts earlier in the year. I will find that and link it down below, because I think you can make a really cute layout with these printables and that cut file as well. So I flipped my pockets over just so I can see where those cards are going to go, and I do want to add a few little sequins on this side as well. So I added the 2 remaining paper sequins, and I didn't use glue dots for any of those, just the tape runner was fine, and then a few more little sequins just so that the theme kind of carries on to the back of the page as well. I'm adding those sequins to my photo too, rather than the actual printable card down the bottom, because it already has enough going on, I think. Normally in my pocket pages, I don't worry about gluing the cards back to back. In this one, however, the pocket's probably going to end up being a little bit loose, and I don't want those cards to kind of flap around, so I did glue them back to back with a little bit of tape runner and just trim off any excess that there was from my photo printing. And then I'm going to fuse my pocket. Now, my fuse tool has been heating up for a good 10-15 minutes while I've been doing the rest of this page, and I've just used this cardboard guide that I made for myself. I put a whole bunch of measurements on there so I didn't have to keep doing that every single time that I wanted to fuse a pocket. It is really handy. Grab a scrap piece of cardboard, it is pretty thick, measure out some measurements that you might want to use, and that's a really handy little guide there. So when I do my fusing on my pockets, I'm going to trim the outside of this pocket, so I want to make sure that it's nice and fused. You can feel when it's fused because it's quite sort of rough. It feels rough when it's fused nicely. Sometimes that requires fusing on both sides. Just see how that feels, and then flip it over and do the other side just to make sure that it's nice and secure. I have popped my first set of cards into this the pocket that I've created, and I'm not totally worried about the division being fused on both sides. That won't really make any difference, so I've just done a good fusing on one side, popped my second set of cards in, and I am going to fuse up the top just to make sure that those cards don't ever pop out. You technically don't need to fuse the top, but I just do it to make sure it's a little bit more secure. And then I'm going to trim off the excess plastic on the side. You could make that into a sequin pocket as well, just stick a few little sequins in the top there and then fuse the top shut, or just use your scissors to trim it off. You don't need the paper trimmer at all, really. Now I've just got a few more little bits and pieces to add. I did go away and shuffle through my stash a little bit more. I decided I wanted to add a tab onto the side here just to make it a little bit more obvious that the pocket has been trimmed. So I've grabbed those Avery Owl tabs and added one to the sort of the middle of the top card. And I'm just gonna add, didn't want to add any stamps or anything to take away from the rest of the page, so I grabbed a couple of these tiny word stickers. I'm going to stick one on each side because you are going to see both sides of the tab, and then just slip that into the plastic piece, which is harder than you'd think. And then I realized I don't really sort of have a title. I mean, Dip Today in Glitter kind of becomes the title of the page, but I did want to put what the purpose of this page is for, which is that there's 9,000 of you. The journaling on the back sort of describes that, but I do want something on the front here. So I pulled out a bunch of different alphas from my stash, and I had a hard time deciding which ones to use. I went with these sort of yellow ones. They're not quite the same yellow as in the Printables, so I moved them away from the actual tag. The yellow in the tag is the only yellow that's on this side, so I just moved it away, and then I figured, hey, I like all of these alphas, why not use all of these alphas? The sort of title is in the journal card, so I can use these alphas more as embellishments. So I've added some to the tag, and I love these tiny little teal glitter ones from Heidi Swap. They were from a Christmas, I think, a Christmas kit from Citrus Twist a few years ago. I'm almost finished them, but I love them. I've also got these white Avery Elle ones, which were going to be perfect for adding on top of the wood grain paper. And it sort of looked a bit strange to me having 4 different ones, so I'm going to add a 5th one, but on the back this time, so you can see a tiny peek of the white ones from the front when the pocket is flipped over. And so I want to just make sure that these ones are underneath the pocket so you can't see them, so I just carefully laid it down so I could get a visual sort of sense of where it was. Luckily it just fit in there, and that's this page all done. So don't forget to grab the printable for yourself, that is down below, and I'll try and link that sequin cut file as well because that would be perfect with this. I really want to say thanks to you guys. Thanks for all your love and support. It means a huge deal to me, and I really hope that you've enjoyed all these videos today as much as I enjoyed making them for you. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you again very, very soon. Bye guys.